Oh, and Nick called me and was like, hey, do you want to work on History of the World Part 2? And Mel's involved. I was like, no.
Roll it.
Oh, hello.
Who is this? It's your mama.
If you're my mother, what is your last name?
Mel. It's my mother. That confirms it.
I know a lot of Mel's movies by heart. And so when we got the call to do this, it was really a no-brainer. Mel was involved from the jump in sort of conceiving of, you know, what the show could be, the structurally how it worked. He has jokes that he's been waiting to put in things for 40 years that are in throughout the show. And so you feel his presence throughout the show, and like just being able to pay homage to him in all those different ways was incredibly gratifying.
We knew we wanted to honor the first movie and honor just the Mel Brooks universe. And while there was a sketch show and there were going to be some scenes that was just like Josh Gad owning a room, and, you know, or just the Council of Nicaea with just a bunch of funny comedians being awful bishops rewriting history, we also knew there had to be a Civil War battle camp and horses riding up a hill and an actual Russian village where Schmuck Mudman and his family unhappily live, and a musical number. Like, we knew we wanted big things to like give the thing a cinematic feel.
Someday the masses will adore me as together we stand tall.
When you're calling and saying, hey, do you want to work on a Mel Brooks show? You get a lot more yeses than nos, if any.
So not only were people excited to do it, but also understood what, like, generally speaking, humor wise, what the like bellwether was. You know, it's like everybody knows his tone, and so it was trying to stay within that was not that hard because we were all aware of it.
And there were just some folks who, you know, would zip in for a day. Like, you get, you know, Jack Black for a day, but then you get Pam Adlon for a week, and it was just a cornucopia of delights.
I grew up with Mel's movies, and his oeuvre was the first film directors I had ever completed. I just connected in such like a personal way with his comedy, and it spoke to me and inspired me. And the idea that, you know, 40 years after this original classic was released, something that I watched again and again on VHS growing up in the 80s, it's just such a thrill and an honor to get to play in this sandbox with the legend himself. So it's a real thrill.
He shaped comedy, and I think it's really interesting to watch something that, you know, had such profound impact. And I think even without really knowing that necessarily as a child, his work just speaks for itself. And it's to be doing this show with something with content that's so legendary in terms of sort of the original IP, and then also with a person who in our industry so legendary, was such a cool thing to do.
With so many of Mel Brooks's movies, like, my dad was like, he loved Mel Brooks. And so many of my experiences and my introductions to his films, Blazing Saddles being the first, like, all came through my dad, and like his love for Mel Brooks, like, and the way he laughed made me laugh, you know, and that's from Life Stinks through, you know, Blazing Saddles to Spaceballs to History of the World to Young Frankenstein, like everything that like he attached to, like, I wanted to understand why. And I think in doing that, what I didn't realize was happening at the time, like, back to what Zazie said, but like, we were kids watching this comedic genius and like watching him create something that so many people have been influenced by.
I don't remember the first time I saw History of the World Part 1 because it's always been in me. Like, I remember everything about it. It's just my childhood, like the Towering Inferno, like, you know, The Wizard of Oz. It's just like, it's wired into my brain and my DNA. And so I, you know, had no choice. I grew up the kid of a comedy writer and producer. And so, you know, Mel is our one-man band Jewish version of Monty Python. And Mel, your hero, is able to like be a part of it and not just like sit like pushed up against a window with a thin blanket over his legs and we're doing a show for him. He's in it and part of it. It's the greatest kind of perfect moment.
I would say my household was much more of a Robin Hood Men in Tights home that was always on repeat. And, he was the guy in our youth and something that I shared with my siblings. And as far as being like a formative influence in the early part of my, life, like I was also a ravenous Get Smart fan. Like on Nick at Night would watch it all the time and was really so thrilled when in 8th grade we did Get Smart as a play and I got cast as Agent 99. Thank you very much. So I will say I was really, truly like paying a lot of attention to him as a young person. And to be part of the second installment of History of the World was just such a wild opportunity, and one that at first I was so thrilled about. And then very shortly thereafter, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do Mel Brooks. Like, what am I trying to do here? Like, it's way too ambitious. But we just had such a great team, and I think we just took it one little choice at a time, and I think we're all really happy with the work.
Really most important was Mel was always pushing the envelope, and I think our goal was to do the whatever version in 2023 of that. And I think he and also simultaneously was silly. Like, his work was never quite political, even though he was making broader societal observations. But it was also fun and silly and didn't take itself too seriously. And I think that was important to us to find as well. One of the things I loved about Fargo, the TV show, is that how much they paid homage not only to the movie, but all of the Coen brothers' work. And we were doing our version of that with what we're calling the MBU, the Mel Brooks universe. And so there are jokes, if you watch the show, there are jokes in there from Blazing Saddles and from the producers and Young Frankenstein and Spaceballs, as well as History of the World, that some of the jokes we wrote in our writer's room, and also, comics would come in with their own, like Jason Alexander would be like, oh, I can do a callback to Spaceballs, or Ken Marino's like, I can do a callback to this part of History of the World. Like, there were always ways to sort of pay homage to Mel's work, sprinkled throughout the show, almost every episode.
Wow.
You want Jesus to be white.
That's not what I'm saying. Don't you put words in my mouth.
History of the World, Part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2. Part 2.
If this was on Netfish, I would cancel my subscription.